But it's an opportunity when you really feel like you're down and you're stripped of a lot of things, then you really have to think about what do you want to pull back up with you.
Release me from the pattern of electricity and save me from the weeping and the wailing. I'm rising.
Hey love, thanks so much for dropping into Time in the Studio. This is a place where we offer support for multi-passionate, earth-loving creatives who want to dig in and flourish. And I'm your host, Sarah Marie Miller. I'm an artist, herbalist, and doula in Boulder, Colorado. And I got to chat with the amazing Leah Larabelle of High Garden Tea for today's episode. It was such a great conversation. We talked about the connection with wild plants and the idea of using plants versus working with them, and how she views herself as more of a matchmaker for plants and people and a plant wisdom keeper. She got to study with David Winston, and she has rebuilt a business numerous times, constantly pivoting and, working with things even when a tornado whisks it all away. We talk about some of her favorite teachers and working through health issues. We also talk about the sense of losing a sense and having to collaborate with a loved one to be able to get things to taste just right and smell just right. We also talk about she's developing a really beautiful herbal program. And it was really fun to hear more about that, creating accessible herbal education for people. And the idea that you always want to make other people happy when you're running a business, that it's such a part of your heart and a part of yourself. It was really fun to hear about that. A little bit more about who she is. Leah Larabelle is a nature-loving wife, mother, and daughter who finds a great deal of purpose and satisfaction in sharing her love for the land. Leah descended from a long line of Celtic Cunning Folk and has found her ancient gifts within the world of herbalism. After awakening this passion, she became obsessed with learning as much as possible and has dedicated over a decade of her life to rigorously studying and diligently practicing the art of herbalism. She has been taught by renowned herbal elders as well as Mother Nature herself. As a clinical level herbalist, she considers herself a Western eclectic herbalist and is so grateful to the many plant wisdom keepers from many lands that passed down this art so she may carry it today. Many experiences over the years have humbled her to consciously removing her ego from the herbal practice, realizing it's not her who offers healing, but the plants who do the good work. Each one bringing some type of special knowledge or ability ready to help if you just know who to ask. With this, Leah never uses plants, instead she calls upon them, asks for their help, looks toward them for insight, or simply sits by them for companionship. This approach also allows Leah to offer an easy access point to interested beginning herbalists. It's her goal to create as many plant folk and herbalists possible while on this earth walk. She is a forever student of the land and eternally grateful for the lessons. Oh my gosh, and I am offering a shortened, condensed version so that people can really get into the juice of our conversations. That's what you'll find here. If you want the more extended, longer version of our conversation, which is over an hour, you can find that at patreon.com/timeinthestudio. We talk about herbs that may be helpful for interstitial cystitis and the advantages and disadvantages of being a seer. We also talk about more behind the scenes business stuff about herbalism and suggestions for finding focus. We also talk about water and how to honor her spirit more. Thanks so much for being here. And if you wouldn't mind doing me a huge favor, it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with somebody who you think would enjoy it. Thank you so much. Without a further ado, let's get into it. Okay, cha cha cha. So I'm honored and excited to have on the show today Leah Larabelle. I had discovered your work through Fox and Elders podcast and noticed you have all these amazing videos on your Instagram, and looks like you brew beautiful tea. And now you're offering some herbal coursework as well in a tree house, which I can't wait to hear more about. And to hear more about your journey, I'm curious what brought you to herbalism to begin?
I've been asked this question so many times, and I don't think I've ever given the same answer.
Yeah.
But because it's so complex, it depends on what day that I look back and what little link it was that took me to it. There's so many nudges that I'd received along the way that was my earth walk. That was my spirit path. It was everything from growing up among a home and family of, we call them cunning folk. It's a kind of a Celtic term. And my grandmother was a seer, but she didn't like it. And so she very much kind of snuffed it out. And my mom as well. And I wasn't a seer. And I was grateful for it, to be honest with you. But I always just played outside. They called me Squirrel, was my nickname growing up. And people used to say I was kind of feral, and they meant it, I think, in a negative way, but I never took it that way. I liked it.
Yeah.
And so I think I've just always had a connection to the plants and the wildlings, and that's where I felt most at home and who I feel the most comfortable in their company. But as we do, I fought it and, went and did my things. But I was very uncomfortable. I was definitely did not feel comfortable until I came back home to them. Health reasons took me to chronic urinary tract infections, they thought, from like 5 years old to 18 years old. And turns out it was interstitial cystitis or bladder pain.
Oh.
Yeah. And so there's not really a modern medical treatment for that. But I went to a Native American woman, Pipsissewa, and I kind of just knew that plants were going to be able to help me.
Wow.
And they did. And so that was my gift. That condition was my gift because I didn't ever have to question if herbalism worked. I know it does because it did what nothing else could do for me. It offered me relief after all those years. And so for a long time, and I've said this before, I used herbs. I used them for myself, and I used them in a certain way. I didn't become an herbalist that I consider what I want to be as an herbalist until a few trees one day when I was driving along the interstate in a very uncomfortable time showed me or reached out and spoke to me unconditional love. And it's just so obvious. The depth, I learned that plants aren't just physical beings at the point that they are living beings, and they have spirits and they have personalities, and they have ancient wisdom. They've raised us since the beginning of times. We've grown up at their feet. And so that's when I really learned plants as whole beings. And so it's been a long, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Still learning. Most recently as an herbalist, a few years back, I don't know anymore. I've been doing it so long, thank goodness. I found humbleness in it. Because for a while I thought I was really doing something, like I was good, I'm going to find the root of it. Nobody else has been able to figure it out. Oh, I've got you, and I'd whip this thing up, and either it would help or it wouldn't, but we'd eventually get on a path, and it would show some benefit. And then I realized something struck me. I'm not doing a damn thing. I am a matchmaker, and that's a gift that I get to be that. It's the plants doing the work, And so I now I call myself an herbalist, but plant wisdom keeper, co-creator with the plants. I'm here with them, that's it.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I resonate with so many parts of that story. And I think one thing that really, I was like, I need to speak with Leah. Like because I think in the other podcast, whenever you talked about not using the word use plants, and I was like, whoa, I
totally fell into the idea of using plants. And I think in this capitalist society, it's really easy to fall into that. And so, I was definitely not trained that way. I was trained to have deep reverence for the plants, but I think sometimes I just would lose that piece of it. And thank you for bringing that to the forefront. And I think you're such a wordsmith. I noticed through your website, just your use of language is so deep. Something else I want to touch on is just how in dealing with a health issue brings us to herbalism. What was it like studying with David Winston?
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah. I was really reluctant and didn't want to study with David Winston, which means I probably needed to study with David Winston because I'd always been just among the plants. Once I had that kind of realization of we're family and this and that, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is breaking something into constituents and compounds and most modern research and so forth like that. I was just like, hey, I'm not breaking your mama into constituents and compounds. This isn't
right.
I would, as our shop grew and as I would get, some doctors would send people to me and so forth. And I did need to speak common language with them. And so I went ahead and did it so that I could speak common language and create that bridge and everything and not be threatened by it. The plants can still be constituent compounds as we are as well and still have spirits and everything. And I studied with him and I absolutely loved it. The man is a genius. I mean, what is in his head is just textbook after textbook. It's encyclopedias. And so it was an honor to get to study with him and learn a lot of things I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to. So if someone has a chance and they're interested in studying with David, I'd say absolutely do it.
Oh, amazing. And you've had some other remarkable teachers along your path as well. Is there anybody else you want to name?
I'm kind of addicted to taking classes. I like starting in the beginner's level. I like just, what do you have? It keeps me so young and so excited. And so Pip Sisawa, she was my first teacher. Lisa Bednar, she's the Hanama Native woman, and she's going to her place. Honestly, it was like going to the land of Alice in Wonderland or something. I mean, it's just kooky and quirky and fun. And she talks to the plants and has her little creatures that she's a hoot and amazing and such a gift. And so she allowed my quirkiness just to shine bright. And then, but I wanted to get into the woods and I wanted to know their name. I wanted to know everybody's names, which good luck knowing everyone's names, but I want to know as many names as possible. And so I then studied with Daryl Patton, who he's like following around a squirrel. He's just everywhere. But you pretty much can't stump him with a plant. And so it was an honor to walk beside him and behind him, keep up behind him, meet them. And it's kind of like the woods. As it's your friends, the more names you learn. It's kind of like if you go into a party and you don't know anybody and you don't know their names, it's kind of like, it's a really cool vibe and I like being here, but it's way different experience than if you go to a party and even 10 people in this huge room. It creates a very different experience. And that's the same way with really learning some plants and their stories. And I've also found just learning their name, that's okay. That's fine. I can kind of send that back to that whole party thing. Like if I just know a lot of people's name, that doesn't do a lot for me. But if I know a little bit of their story, he's in a band and he has this really cool song. Oh, and she's a weaver. Goodness, I love, her weavings and so forth, and knowing just a little bit of their story. And the more stories you can learn, the deeper those relationships grow. And the more that develops when you walk into the woods. It's just like you're around all your people, your plant people. And you can hear them almost calling out to you, like, where you been? Come here,
Oh, it makes my eyes water, actually, as you say that. I'm like, oh, yes. There's just something so beautiful and so potent about hearing those stories and having that time in nature and deepening that connection and hearing how other people relate to them as well. And it's so, so fun to hear about. Where are you?
I grew up, at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains, but we are right outside of Nashville right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. The shop was in Nashville, and we lived in Nashville for a while, but I needed some land. I needed to be a land keeper too. So we got some acreage out in Jolton. It's just right outside of Nashville.
Oh, amazing.
We do like it a lot. We try to purchase as much land as possible to allow it to go wild. Because that's where a lot of like our plants, when we're losing plants, they're endangered and so forth, it's because of habitat loss. And as these plants are losing habitat and people get so frustrated, like there's this possum in my yard, or there's this deer in my yard. It's like, where do you expect them to go? You know? They need homes. And so that's what we're trying our best to do. We're not just independently wealthy or anything.
Right.
So far, we've got almost 30 acres that are just wild and free.
Oh, that's so inspiring. It's so beautiful. I went to school in Tennessee in Knoxville.
Oh, wow.
So I just love that the land there. It just feels like it's just like rolling hills and so lush and full of kudzu. And so, so exciting to be able to keep wild lands there, because I feel like there's so much hidden medicine in those hills.
Oh, in all the ways.
Yeah.
Even if we don't know how it pertains to us yet, it's medicine for some being. Yeah, we've got to protect the forest, because to plant a tree is a great thing, but a tree standing alone in a field is very different than a full forest habitat, and for oxygen levels, for animals, for plants, for everything. So.
Yeah. I'm also curious to hear about your working on doing some education around herbalism and offering that wisdom to other people.
It's actually on top of our old barn. We have a very old barn. The bottom barely looks like it's standing, but it's standing. It's standing enough to hold. I hope so. So one of our dear friends, Andy's son, has a business called Earth and Home, which is him just doing amazing work and as eco-conscious as possible. Like a lot of the materials he used were what had been, when places have been destroyed by the tornado, some things that were still usable and reused and things he's so, it's wonderful. And so we just really wanted a space to educate, because speaking of a tornado, when we did lose the shop to the tornado, at first, I mean, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself, and it took about 10 years to build up to that inventory and the amount of money it takes to build out something and so forth. And we didn't have the right insurance. It wasn't our insurance company's fault. We're not blaming them. We didn't have the right kind, and we didn't have the right coverage. And so we kind of got stripped back down to almost square one, though we did have a wonderful GoFundMe that helped, but COVID soon followed. And so, things happen, but it's an opportunity when you really feel like you're down and you're stripped of a lot of things, then you really have to think about, what do you want to pull back up with you? And I looked around and I had Joel, my husband, and I had Woods, my son. Okay, we're fine then. We're fine. A lot of people don't have, they look after some type of tragedy or something and they don't have that. So no matter what, from here on out, we're good. We had enough money to eat. We had, so we were good. And so I got to then extend that we were safe. And that's such a luxury. And so then we got to look beyond that, and we didn't just want to reproduce what nature had chosen to pull up. That's a slap in the face of something larger. And I've always wanted to have the time to teach and to pass this wisdom on, because I wouldn't know what I know if it weren't for people that carried this for millennia. And I have found over the years, I think my specialty might be, it's not a gatekeeper, because it's not my gate to keep, but meeting people where they are and getting them excited and making herbalism accessible. And I really love teaching beginners. Oh, it's my favorite. And It is. I'm not going to lie. Maybe 10 years in or something, I thought I was too good for it. I knew so much. Why would I teach beginners? I can teach advanced. And just, I got broke apart like I needed to. And because to send me back to my path. And there's nothing more wonderful than hearing people like starting to let parts of their yard go wild, create a new relationship. And that's where I like to stand. And that's where I like to be, is right wherever you need me for me to give you a hand and kind of pull you on the plant path a little bit. You don't have to be an herbalist, and this classroom would be wonderful. It's a dream to have had that, because we've been teaching classes for probably the past 3 years, but outside or in our living room or, wherever you could shove some people. And this is a proper classroom. We're really, really excited about it. And it's look at treetop level, looking out at the tops of the oak trees, and big windows looking out over the meadow. And we're trying to make it as tree house as possible, because part of going into herbalism is breaking down walls. You got to find that childlike wonder again. You've got to take some of that preconceived notions and ideals of adulthood out of the way, and just be ready to be curious again. And so that's why we kind of really like to go with the treehouse thing, is to autumn. When you're in a little bit of a treehouse, you can't help but go back to a little like state, right?
Yes. Oh my God. It sounds so fun. I'm like, can I just go to Tennessee once a month and go take your classes? It sounds wonderful. I'm curious too. So I don't know the whole history of your shop. So you had a shop in Nashville?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was born out of its own intention. It wanted to be born, so it was. I obviously was in herbalism, and I was a therapist actually at a boys group home.
Oh, cool.
That's what I went to school for, other than herbalism, was psychology. And I made teas on the side, and some restaurants carried them, and people would come by the house when they had a hangover or a cold or whatever, And I thought about it, and a little bitty tiny 200 square foot incubator space, they popped those up near us, and the person developing it reached out, which is really surprising, but they'd heard that they were just Patty. She wanted really different things in there, and she'd heard what I was doing, and she was like, have you thought about it? You maybe want to? And it's like, you know what? I do, but I've got this full-time job, and my husband was a musician at the time and a waiter. And he said, well, I'm happy to not wait tables if you want, let's do this. And we did that thing. We opened that tiny little shop. We had gotten married the year that we were kind of planning it, and we took any money that we'd saved for our honeymoon, or if people were going to get us gifts, we just opened a honey fund. But instead of actually going on a honeymoon or anything, we spent it on the paint, and Joel made all the shelves. He made everything by hand in there, and we decorated it just from the woods. And it was so precious to us. It was so precious. And it ended up being, and it was just us. It was something I'd always wanted. It was an herb shop that we also made our own herbal blends for purpose. And we'd sit there and tell people, about them. And Joel knew tea. I left that part out. My husband, he had traveled and done some humanitarian work, and he'd fallen in love with the actual tea beverage, and so he was over the tea, and it ended up taking off. Our mind was just blown. All we wanted to do is just make enough to keep its doors open. And I kept my other job, so I was working both at the time. And we got a little bit bigger shop, the 800 square foot shop, and we loved it, but something didn't set right with me. I realized I didn't want a store. I wanted people to come be, and they could spend hours and feel comfortable, like not someone was just like, well, what are you going to buy now? Just create this in-town escape, a woodland escape for people. And that's what, saving, we managed to renovate and redo an old kind of rundown space in East Nashville and turned it into a little woodland escape. And it had the tea and herbs up front, and then the middle room was this tea drinking area, and the back room was our potion parlor, where we created potions and with house fermented beverages and so forth. And it was really, 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 really special. It really was.
It sounds like a dream. I'm like, why did I never know about that? It sounds incredible.
And part of me wants to just, I can reproduce it. We know how to do it. Like, we can take out a loan, we can do this. But then that deeper knowing piece of you that sits somewhere way deeper, it knows not to just reproduce something that the larger knew to suck up and expand. And so that message very much has come through to expand. One way to expand is to expand herbal knowledge and expand and share. And I just make as many plant folk out there as I possibly can. And if we do another location, it will be outside. Just a teaser. It will.
Yeah.
There will be no walls. And if they are, they will be the kind that you can roll up or something.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so just right on the nose for this present time. It's like to have a space where people can be outside together and have tea and learn about the plants. Like, that just feels so perfect and, and important.
Finding the money to buy land is another thing. It's all in due time. We're really, right now, we're honestly, it's given me an opportunity to really look at just our product, because that's what instead of running a shop, because running a shop, oh my goodness, I'm not going to glorify what it sounds like. It's hard. There's a reason you don't see a ton of apothecaries and tea rooms just bursting at the seams, because it is hard, because what you love is herbalism. You don't love being a manager.
Right.
You don't love managing people, and customer service it's a gift, but it's also, if it's an expression of yourself, if your shop or your business or anything is an expression of yourself, one bad Yelp review is literally, you can replace the shop's name with your name and you feel it that hard. It feels like a direct, just, you've failed, oh God, and that shop was a piece of us, and we took everything so deep and wanted everybody to be so happy. We had 14 employees. We had tons of people.
Wow.
The pressure to keep everyone, which is an impossible feat, literally. You and I both know that. My head knows that. To keep everyone happy, and it was a lot of pressure. And so right now we just get to look at our product, and I want it to be the best dang thing that, when you take a sip of that, you can feel it soaking into your body and going straight to that place it is intended to go. And so that's where we're really, really focusing right now, in education, and getting education as accessible as possible. That's the thing. Herbal education can be very expensive.
Definitely.
Really expensive. And that's why our program is pay what you can. It is. But the minimum, it is a $1,500 program that I can get down to $750. And you're like, well, it takes $750. The time to prepare and to teach and to grade and to 5 months of your life, like it's $750. That's like you're still volunteering, basically. Yeah, it is. But we're going to try it. We're going to try it. And we're hoping to create an online type situation the following year, which I can't make anything easy. It's going to be an in-person online, because I have seen, and I don't know, maybe you haven't, but if I sign up for this online class and I have the best intentions of completing it, I really do. I love the content. But if I'm not held accountable, or there's no roll call, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not the teacher's fault. It's not the program's fault. It's my own fault. But I have this dream of an in-person online that you show up for 3 hours each Tuesday, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to do that. And we're finding several avenues of affordable and accessible herbalism courses.
I love that idea. I feel like I want to be there. That sounds good, because I feel like it's amazing to be in person. I love in-person classes, but I'm also, because of COVID and everything being shut down, it's also really nice to have resources. I'm taking a doula workshop with Birdsong, and they're in New York City, and I wouldn't normally be able to do that, but they're online, and so I can. It works now. So I feel like it is such a gift to have an online offering, and to to have a live element to it, I think is really helpful and beneficial too. That's so exciting. I love kind of looking at your product line too. I love the names of all of your teas, like appetizer. There's just so many like sweet little puns and just playing with words, and the blends just seem so beautiful and delicious. I'm curious like how that's evolved, and how do you decide on a formula? Like how do you come to that final decision?
Thank you for asking. I almost quit doing tea after the shop.
Oh.
I had an identity crisis, I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I had a shop. I was an herbalist that had a shop that people came and saw me, but now it's COVID. People still can't come see. It's just this whole thing. And I was like, okay, again, strip it all away. And I love tea. And I knew if you can't let it go, then don't let it go. Right. I think of it as an embodiment of herbalism in a tea bag, because it isn't just, tea has been so just, gosh, sometimes it just pisses me off when I see this stuff in tea bags on the shelf and it's like liver tea with milk thistle. Milk thistle isn't water extractable,
Right.
but it's in tea bags. But the reason that it's in tea bags is because people know the name milk thistle. And so they're putting it in the tea bags to make people buy it. But the people aren't even getting the liver tonic effects from it because it's not water extractable. Or I see like green tea with eleuthero root and all these roots in it. Well, either you're oversteeping your green tea to let the roots have time to steep, or you're understeeping your roots to pull your green tea out of the time. It's just a bad combination,
Yeah.
And tea, and I do know why tea has lost kind of the attention, is because there isn't a huge markup on it. You ain't going to get rich making tea. Let me just tell you that. Like there's a good markup on tinctures. There is a good markup on caps, huge markup on capsules. All the other herbal products, there is a massive space for markup for some reason. People are just used to paying a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
But tea, there is a very little, like so much that we can't even wholesale our packages out places. But I don't care. And I love it. And I'm going to dadgummit, I'm keeping the integrity of good herbalism in tea alive. And so are other companies. I'm not saying it's just me doing it. Like a forest, because there's lots of trees doing the work. And I know there's plenty other herbal tea trees out there, herbal tea people, but I want to be one of them too. The formulas come because I've studied my butt off for decades. When I think of basically what comes first now is a need. I see a need. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, for example, care. That's one of our recent blends was care. And it was just because I saw so many people hurting right now, or wanting to take care of themselves, but kind of not even knowing how, being like, okay, I need to go buy up a whole bunch of really expensive bottles of these capsules, or I need to do these complicated things. And I'm like, no, I mean, a little bit of hawthorn, a little bit of nettle, this good tea. And then also people wanting to send people care, knowing that other people might be having a hard day. So sending this package of care to someone. Anyway, I knew care would be a needed tea. And so then you just think about, all right, so what's care supposed to do? Well, it's going to be a whole body tonic. All right, someone reaching for self-care, you want to send someone care. What organs, what systems may be that need nourished? Mm-hmm. Well, the whole body. So my brain, I don't even remember, well, how about nettle? Or, there's lots of different ways you can go. The heart, the heart needs love and care. So you'll think hawthorn or rose, and a healthy body needs a healthy lymphatic system. So I went, you can go calendula, you could go cleavers, violet leaf. And then you just that's how I kind of do it, is I work down of what it needs to be. And then I am fortunate enough to I do have a bit of an herbal encyclopedia in my head now. So it just automatically goes. But then you start putting them all together, and I'll make a batch and I'll guess on what the recipe, and something no one knows that's just been released on this podcast. Truly, no one knows this except my husband and close friends, is I lost my sense of smell about 2 years ago. And I just slowly in pregnancy, once I had delivered Woods and everything, it was completely gone. And so I can't smell. And that's really important when tasting teas.
Yeah.
Volatile oils, the essences, and so forth. And so my husband, so I'll make a batch, and I'll bring it in and I'll have him taste it. And fortunately he has a tea palate. So he has a very advanced palate and he can tell me what to go up or down. And so after I put the base in, I know what the health part is, it's done. And then I try to flavor it on top of it with herbs that accentuate, because it isn't just about flavoring at that point either. It's, well, cinnamon may add this moistening or this synergy, or lavender is a great flavor, but this is a calming blend, so it's also going to add that, and so forth. So you flavor in effort to make your blend stronger. It's a beautifully complex and fun art form. Art. It's like painting, but that you eat. You drink.
I love that. That's so fun to hear about, and it's so fascinating to think of not being able to taste or smell yourself, and so to have that collaboration with your husband and just be able to be like, try this, and that he has that palate that can help navigate that. That's so beautiful and such a cool connection.
I just created a couple kids lines that haven't been released, just 2 little kids teas. So I'd bring it into Woods. And it doesn't have the words yet, but I love it. We finally landed on a couple.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm curious if there's like struggles that you've had to overcome in building your business. How do you make your business sing and make it work and pivot through all these challenges?
I would say my first challenge that I can remember was thinking, these herbs offer me so much. These plants give me so much. They give me food. Plants feed me. Trees house me. It gives me shelter. Plants are my medicine. Who am I to ask them to also make me money? Like, how can I possibly try to make a business out of something that is already so rich and lucrative in my life? And so I was very hesitant for a very, very long time to put any type of financial spin to it at all. And that's why even in our first shop, I kept my other job. It was kind of like, I don't know, in my brain, it was like, it helped with the guilt of it almost or something. So I have no idea what it is for someone else. Everybody has their own, their own journey, their own experiences. But I would maybe say, if the hobby, if the experience, if it gives you joy, if it's giving you a lot, let that be enough. Do it, and do it with love, and do it so much that your heart sings, and it will become what you do. If you are focusing on how to do it, you're not doing it. So just do it, and do it how you love it. And sometimes you see something, you're like, I have to offer this to people. Like, this is so good. That was kind of where the shop came from. Honestly, the first shop, it wasn't because I was wanting a shop. It was because I wanted this thing to exist. I wanted to walk into that little apothecary, and it was nowhere to be found. I would have been thrilled to have found it. But because I was working with herbs so much, because I was creating tea so much, I wanted this thing to exist. And so finally it was like, well, then freaking open me, woman, like, and so it came, because each step, what I've learned, I've taken a lot of avenues. I've been a teacher. I've owned a modeling agency. I've been an event planner. I've been a guidance counselor. I've been a therapist. You name it, I've done. Like, it's crazy. And each time there were, how you hit those little roadblocks, you hit those little stumps, and sometimes you jump over them. Sometimes you turn around, but if you jump over them, you're probably going to find another stump in the way. Like, when you start traveling down that path that you aren't even walking, you're floating because you enjoy it so much, there's a lot less stumps in the way, and it just unfolds. But for for my first love, the plants, they get that respect that I definitely try to keep. I don't even know what it is. I don't have words for it really. Like, I respect them so much and appreciate them so much to just fly about and do whatever haphazardly. Like, I want to represent them. They give their lives to go into that tea bag. They give their lives to make that tincture, and they have really important lives. It needs to make the difference that we're hoping or that we're trying for it to make, or I don't know what the point was. And so, and herbalism is constantly, in a way, under attack from so many angles. And so for me to turn out a product that like only half works, I'm only building that reputation of like, yeah, I don't know if it does anything. And it's just, I'm not going to be a part of that story either. And not to say, though, that my gut feeling tea is a good tea. That's one heck of a good intestinal, anti-inflammatory, like it is an incredibly great tea for intestinal inflammation. But that's not going to work for everybody's issue, because there's such a variety of what issues someone may be trying to handle with this one blend. Just that doesn't mean the herbs didn't do their job. It just wasn't a right match. So that's the only thing with offering like a kind of a comprehensive herb line without doing one-on-one consults is I'm not to talk to that person and I'm like, oh, no. You need more astringent herbs because it sounds like you've got some tissues that need tightening and toning, blah, blah, blah. So that's just one area. Or plants and people have chemistry. They work or they don't. And sometimes it's at different phases in life. Like I have this amazing relationship with rhodiola last year, or right now rhodiola and I have had our time, and rhodiola is like, hey, you go visit somebody else. And so that's who kind of calls your name too. It just changes. But now if I take rhodiola, it feels kind of drying.
Yeah.
I would swear at some points it saved my life. So it's so complex about so much chemistry. So again, by me saying I'm turning out the best products that I can, like I'm doing the best job that I can, but there's so many other stories going on at the same time. That doesn't mean that it's definitely going to work. I just, for my own sanity, have to know that I did the best job that I could, and the rest has to set itself.
So beautiful. That dedication and intention to just do the best you can. I'm curious. I want to honor your time, but I'm also curious if there's any herbs that you are really smitten with right now to help through the days of COVID. I'm curious if there's like some of your favorite herbs that you've been working with or that you've been suggesting for other people.
That is another place where it varies so much from person to person, because where COVID is so different is it's kind of like it finds your weakest spots and exposes them. An organ that maybe, or an inflammation or blood, just all these different things. So it really, really is so personal on asking the person to sit for just a second, kind of like I talked with Sarah, and where am I? Do I tend to inflame? Like, then maybe look at, anti-inflammatory herbs. Who calls out to me? I really like turmeric in that situation. It's just an easy, accessible, the heart, the circulatory system, a lot of grief, a lot of worry is going on, with so much. So hawthorn and rose have really been showing to be beautiful allies right now. And the stress, it can cause digestive damage and so forth. Holy basil has really shown in a lot of ways. And believe it or not, Eleuthero root, the original adaptogen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, on several levels in a lot of different ways. It's very, very beneficial. And I could honestly go on and list just about every herb that I know. You could be like, well, what about calendula? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, calendula. To help any irritated tissues that you have. And that's back to where it is of, I could sit here and boast about all these herbs I know and this and that. You could honestly go into an apothecary or go look at a bulk herb store online, or go look at my teas, whatever, and just whatever you're attracted to, it's going to help, because it's going to help you find health. And herbs are so intelligent, and they meet you where you are. But now is the time to put them in your body. That's the thing. It doesn't just put them in your body. And it doesn't mean go for the strongest. Like, I know some people are like, I've been drinking your Get Well every day for 2 months. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, you're not sick. Like, no, that's your body's like, what's happened? What are you doing? You know, like, drink just that nourishing stuff. Just have these restorative, longevity, vitality, whatever herbs. And that's the ones, whatever, this is the opportunity for it. And it would be so sad if all this happens and everything just goes right back to how it was. It's so sad when I hear that they're like, can't wait for things to go back to the way they were. And it's like, oh, what a depressing thought. To learn nothing or to change nothing. When we had all this stuff, people, my friend Jeremy Lekich and Vanessa Paz, they're partners, and it's now a cooperative, but they have Nashville Foodscapes, and they've never been so busy because they help people make their yard edible. To learn how to eat from the land, how to garden. You know, gardening shops are just booming, and people were really interested in getting out and foraging. And all of a sudden you found, like, when everything's down, who's there? Who catches you? The land, the earth. When you don't have a grocery store to go, oh, I need to worry about growing my own food. Like, this is our opportunity to reunite with, you know, with the earth, with our whole. We are a piece of nature. We just somehow in our brains separated ourselves, which is insane. But to reunite and become whole again, which would tend to lots of that separation. I call it separation anxiety, is where a lot of anxiety does come from. It's just the separation from full self, from whole. And so, just the flow, allow those emotions to come through, really paying attention to water.
I want to check in and see if there's anything else coming to the surface for you that you want to give voice to.
I want to help people create as deep of a relationship with plants as they want to, as with nature. It's not just plants. I have dear friends that we work with wildlife sanctuaries, the animals, the plants, just the wild. And either reach out to me if you want to learn, or if you just have any input of what you need, what could I do? Because that's where I'm struggling right now. It's like, okay, I want to teach all these people. You know how many people I can teach next year? 10. I can teach 10. That's not really reaching the audience that like, it's great. That's great. But, and someone may have just this little, just something they're like, oh, this is little, but here it is. And it would just create this aha of how do I offer this as much as possible in the most accessible way, to where I could help them walk the plant path, or just the nature path that best suits them. There's mushrooms, there's plants, there's wild woods, there's naturalism, there's all of it.
Yeah. Well, Leah, it's been so wonderful connecting with you, and thank you so much for taking this time.
You too. It's been wonderful, and I look forward to continuing to listen to you.
Oh, yeah. How can people connect with you and support your work and hear all about what you have going on?
Well, we have our website, and that is truly how we put food on the table. And our Instagram is where we're most active, and we're just at High Garden Tea on Instagram.
Well, I can feel just like really beautiful things brewing, and it's just, such an honor to be able to sit with you and connect, and so excited to continue to learn from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful night.
You too.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chat. And please be sure to connect with Leah on Instagram at High Garden Tea. She also has a gorgeous website and really beautiful tea offerings and spice offerings. So please be sure to check that out as well. And if you want to hear the longer version of our chat, you can go to patreon.com/timeinthestudio. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you're well, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Toodaloo.